Welcome back to Cancer Buzz. I'm your host, Summer Johnson. All this week, we've been bringing listeners along as we report on the events and dynamic sessions from ACCC's 51st Annual Meeting and Cancer Center Business Summit. Oncology professionals from all across the country look forward to this summit every year. It's a chance to gather, network, and learn about the latest trends in cancer care. One of the highlights today, and there were many, was a 90-minute discussion between ACCC's 2024-25 President, Dr. Nadine Barrett, and ASCO President, Dr. Robin Zon. Here's Zon.
So first is, I think one of the big issues is the oncology workforce shortages. We have the data. We know that there's, X number over the age of 50 that are getting ready to retire and not enough to replace us. The good news is we have 18 million survivors. In addition to those survivors, they're living longer and they're getting multiple cancers. So the volume in terms of the need is increasing, and the workforce to be able to supply that and to be able to manage that need is shrinking. So that being said, that is a challenge. So how can we address that jointly? Well, it has about collaboration and helping build teams. Certainly we're going to have to collaborate with others. We're going to have to collaborate more and incorporate, as many of us already are, NPs and PAs, for example, plus your pharmacists, plus the other people that are in team management, which could be a challenge at a community level.
Topics ranged from current challenges in cancer care to leadership strategies. Here's Barrett.
I think it's Dr. Wynn that says conquering cancer is a team sport. And it really is. It takes all of us, not just within our organizations, but across our organizations as well, to create that kind of change that's needed. And I do think that the more we can be advocates within our organizations for all the points that we raised earlier about policy and opportunities there, the more we can align in those spaces, I think are really critical. And not just align, but actually leverage the impact that we have at our respective organizations and across our states to really kind of influence and impact policy in a way that really leads us to the point where we want to go, which is to conquer cancer.
And how to build up the next generation of oncology leaders. There was a meaningful discussion on mentorship. Here's Zon again.
So I think about the 3 A's. I think about being affable, able, and available. And if you can kind of keep that in mind, that's something that I think you should consider when you're designing or if you want to become a mentor. But I think there's a couple different forms of mentorship. There's mentorship when it's incidental. I always tell people, remember, somebody's always watching you. And depending on what you're doing, people can become inspired by that. You may not even know that. So for example, I had a couple mothers come to me recently where I practice and thanked me. I was like, oh, well, you're welcome. What did I do? And she goes, well, my daughters are doctors because of you. And I said, well, I remember interacting with them, and they played with my daughters, and I did all the things. I was a soccer mom, and did all of that. And because they saw that you were able to do it, and you were happy, and you took good care of the kids, that they felt that they could do it as well. So that's one level of mentorship that you don't necessarily sign up for, but yet we are always mentors all the time.
Much of the 90-minute discussion focused on shaping the future of care. Here's Barrett on the use of AI in cancer care.
My concern and thought around that is if we use AI and then we're not capturing data, we stop capturing data, social demographic data on patients, particularly around race, ethnicity, LGBTQ, sexual gender minorities, et cetera, then how does that all really work together, right? It doesn't quite mesh in the same way to me. And so I think that we just need to be really intentional about when we're talking about AI and the movement of it, to be clear of that. Some of the algorithms are based on data that race-based medicine and studies have already shown that there were major glitches, major disparities and inequities in the care that was done back then. And so depending on where we're putting that data from, we need to be mindful that we're putting data that's not also filled with bias based on biased care and treatment that has happened over the past 50, 60 years. And so these are the kinds of things that I think we need to keep at the forefront.
Zon left the audience with a specific call to action for oncology leaders to have the hard conversations that are necessary to move forward.
So my call to action is specific for this audience. Just to kind of level set, I realize that there's a lot of diversity in this office in terms of who we are. So we may have physicians here, we have business leaders, administrators, nurse practitioners, and so on. So a very diversified audience. But I think what we can all say and we can commit to is our mission is one, and the mission is to conquer cancer. My call to action is based on the fact that because we come in with a diversity, we also come in with different goals that we're asked to achieve to be able to achieve that mission. And the issue is those goals don't always align with each other. And sometimes it actually causes conflict. So my very bold call to action is to acknowledge that we may all share the mission, but we may not. We may have goals that are conflicting with each other. And perhaps what we need to do is step back and take a look at how can we dovetail, how can we better align those goals so we can still be successful in whatever venue, whatever lane we're working in, but at the same time enhance and elevate the care so that we do in fact conquer cancer. That's a bold goal because that means compromise will be necessary. People are gonna have to give and take a little bit. People may have to reprioritize, and that's everybody in the room. And guess what? You may not be able to get everything that you want, but that's okay at the end of the day.
ACCC's Barrett received laughter from around the room when she answered a question about imposter syndrome as women at the top of their professions. You'll hear why.
It's never been a concept in my head to kind of like, I've always felt like I'm good enough. I'm more concerned about, is the environment ready for me? And I, Doug's laughing. like it's because it's those kinds of thinking, like even with like imposter syndrome, it implies then that I've got this thing about myself that I feel like I don't belong. And I'm like, no, actually, oftentimes it's the environment that may not necessarily be ready for me. And so what do we need to do to change that environment so that all of us can show up and in our authentic selves and thrive? And so as you can tell, some of my terminology is always flipping it. Instead of saying building trust, trustworthy, always kind of coming back in this space.
It was a jam-packed day today at AMCCBS, and we'll be right back here again tomorrow for more from DC. Until then, for the entire Cancer Buzz team, this is Summer Johnson.
This show is a resource of the Association of Cancer Care Centers.